Dr. Alan Moore wiped sweat from his forehead as the Arizona sun beat down on him. The Sonoran Desert stretched out in all directions, a beautiful but harsh landscape of cacti, rocky soil, and scattered brush. Alan adjusted his wide-brimmed hat and crouched down to examine a small burrow in the ground. "Come on, little friend," he whispered, carefully using a thin probe to widen the entrance. "Show yourself." Alan had been tracking tarantula populations for 3 weeks now, part of his research at Arizona State University. As an entomologist specializing in desert arthropods, he had spent countless hours in these conditions, but today felt different, somehow. The air seemed charged with an unusual energy. He looked up at the cloudless blue sky, squinting against the brightness. That's when he saw it, a shimmer in the air, like heat waves, but more defined. Alan blinked, thinking it might be dehydration playing tricks on his eyes, but the shimmer grew larger, taking shape until a sleek silver object about the size of a small car hovered 30 feet above the desert floor. Alan stood frozen, his research forgotten. The object made no sound as it descended smoothly, kicking up a small cloud of dust when it touched down 20 yards away. It looked like nothing he had ever seen. No visible engines, wings, or rotors, just a seamless metallic surface with subtle blue lights pulsing along its edges. A seam appeared in the side of the craft, widening into an opening. Alan's heart hammered in his chest. He knew he should run, or at least call someone, but curiosity rooted him to the spot. His hand trembled as he reached for the phone in his pocket. Before he could dial, a figure emerged from the craft. Alan gasped. It was clearly not human. The being stood about 5 feet tall with blue-tinged skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. It had 4 large eyes, 2 in the normal position and 2 smaller ones above them. Its body was slender with 4 arms ending in 3-fingered hands. The creature wore what appeared to be a form-fitting silver suit that moved like liquid when it walked. Dr. Alan Moore, the being spoke in perfect English, though its mouth, a small horizontal slit, barely moved. "We mean you no harm. I am Ambassador Krell of the Zirconian people." Alan struggled to find his voice. "How do you know my name? What are you?" 2 more beings emerged from the craft, similar in appearance but with slight variations in skin tone and height. "We have been observing your planet for some time," Krell explained, approaching slowly with hands raised in what seemed like a universal gesture of peace. "Your internet makes learning about Earth's inhabitants quite simple. We selected you specifically because of your scientific background and what our observations suggest is a calm and analytical nature." Alan's scientific mind began to overcome his shock. "You're aliens? Actual extraterrestrial beings?" "That is correct," Krell said. "We represent the Galactic Confederation, an alliance of species from across this sector of the galaxy. We have been debating whether to make official contact with Earth for several decades." One of the other aliens stepped forward, holding a small device that projected a holographic image of the solar system, then zoomed out to show a vast network of stars. "I'm Vex," this alien said, voice slightly higher pitched than Krell's. "Junior, science officer, your planet is here." A blue dot pulsed in the projection. "Our confederation spans this region, a large section of the galaxy illuminated. Over 200 sentient species participate in our alliance." Alan found himself moving closer, fascination overcoming fear. "This is incredible. Why now? Why make contact with me instead of our governments?" "Official diplomatic contact will come," Ambassador Krell explained. "But our studies show that sudden, large-scale first contact often creates panic and political complications. We prefer to begin with individuals who can help ease the transition. Your species is still divided by nations and ideologies. A neutral scientific perspective seemed ideal." Alan looked back at his dusty truck parked a quarter-mile away, then at the alien craft. His entire understanding of the universe had just shifted dramatically. "What happens now?" "We invite you to join us," Krell said, gesturing to their ship. "Our mothership orbits Earth beyond your satellite detection range. We would like you to see it, to learn about us, and perhaps serve as an informal ambassador while official channels are established. Alan hesitated. How do I know this isn't some elaborate hoax? Or that you won't, I don't know, experiment on me? The aliens looked at each other, and Alan had the distinct impression they were amused. A reasonable concern, Krell acknowledged. We can only offer you our word and the opportunity to witness something few humans have seen. Earth from orbit. You may bring your communication device and inform others of your whereabouts. We will return you whenever you wish. Vex stepped forward again. Dr. Moore, you study Earth's arthropods. Imagine studying life forms from dozens of worlds. The scientific knowledge alone would be worth the risk, would it not? That struck a chord with Alan. His entire life had been devoted to understanding the complex world of insects and arachnids. The chance to learn about alien biology was irresistible. Let me call my department head, Alan said, pulling out his phone. I'll tell her I'm taking some personal time. 20 minutes later, after a brief call explaining he was pursuing an unexpected research opportunity, Alan found himself inside the scout ship. The interior was surprisingly spacious, with curved walls that glowed with soft light. There were no visible controls, yet the ship hummed to life as the aliens entered. The journey will take approximately 40 minutes, Krell explained as Alan strapped into a seat that molded itself around his body. The takeoff was so smooth that Alan only realized they were moving when the desert floor rapidly shrank beneath them. Within moments, they had passed through the clouds, the blue sky darkening until stars became visible. There was no sensation of speed or acceleration, yet Earth's curvature soon became apparent. My God, Alan whispered, looking out at his home planet. The blue oceans, swirling cloud patterns, and brown-green continents looked exactly like photographs he'd seen. But seeing it with his own eyes was overwhelming. Remarkable, isn't it? Vex said, joining him at the viewing port. Each world has its own beauty, but Earth has exceptional biological diversity compared to most life-bearing planets. As they approached what looked like a star growing brighter, Alan realized it was the mothership. It was enormous, at least a mile long, shaped like an elongated diamond with various structures protruding from its surface. Welcome to the Ascension, Krell said as their small craft approached a docking bay. Current home to representatives from 27 species and your temporary residence, should you accept our invitation. Alan watched as the massive ship grew larger, his mind racing with questions and possibilities. In the space of an hour, he had gone from searching for tarantulas in the desert to approaching an alien mothership. Whatever happened next would change his life, and potentially all of humanity, forever. I accept, Alan said simply, his eyes fixed on humanity's future. Alan had been aboard the Ascension for 3 weeks now. His initial fear had given way to wonder and excitement. The mothership was like a small city in space, with areas designed to accommodate various alien species. The Zirconians had created a special section for Alan with Earth normal gravity, temperature, and atmosphere. His daily routine now included meetings with different alien representatives, tours of the ship's facilities, and long sessions exchanging knowledge with his new alien friends. Alan had grown particularly close to Vex, the young Zirconian scientist, and Silt, a reptilian Dracorian with scales that changed color based on mood. This morning, Alan sat in what the aliens called the exchange chamber, a room designed for cultural and scientific sharing. Holographic displays surrounded them, currently showing images from Earth that Alan had helped select. I still don't understand how your species tolerates such temperature extremes, Silt said, his scales shifting to a curious orange hue. The Dracorian was about 7 feet tall with a long tail and a narrow snout. From frozen tundra to burning deserts on the same planet, sometimes just miles apart, humans are adaptable, Alan replied with a smile. We use clothing, shelter, and technology to survive. But many Earth creatures have amazing adaptations built right into their bodies. Vex manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up images of various Earth ecosystems. What fascinates me is the sheer variety of life forms. Most habitable planets we've encountered have perhaps a few thousand species total. Earth has millions. And they're constantly eating each other, Silt added, scales briefly flashing a troubled purple. Most worlds have simple food chains. Plants convert energy. Herbivores eat plants and maybe one or two predator species exist. But Earth? He gestured at the displays showing lions hunting zebras and sharks catching seals. Alan had noticed this reaction before. Whenever he discussed Earth's predator-prey relationships, the aliens seemed uncomfortable. At first he thought they were squeamish, but he had gradually realized it was deeper than that. Most alien worlds apparently had far simpler ecological systems with minimal predation. Speaking of fascinating Earth creatures, Alan said, I've been wanting to share my specialty with you. I study insects and arachnids, small invertebrate animals. Ah, yes, Vex said. The tiny creatures. We've observed them in our surveys. Remarkably diverse. Alan pulled a small data drive from his pocket. I've prepared a presentation on some of the most interesting examples, may I? Vex took the drive and inserted it into the control panel. The hologram shifted to show close-up images of various insects. Butterflies with colorful wings, beetles with iridescent shells, and ants building complex colonies. These are beautiful, Silt admitted, his scales shifting to an appreciative blue. Insects make up the majority of animal species on Earth, Alan explained, warming to his subject. They're found in nearly every habitat. Some can lift many times their body weight, others can jump extraordinary distances, and many can fly with incredible precision. As Alan spoke, the display showed more images. Bees pollinating flowers, termites building massive mounds, and butterflies transforming through their life cycle. Fascinating social structures, Vex commented, examining the bee colonies. Similar to some aspects of zirconian hive cities of our ancient past. Alan nodded enthusiastically. Many insects have complex social systems, but what I find most interesting are the unique survival strategies they've evolved. He used the controls to bring up a new image, a large black wasp with orange wings. This is what I was studying when we first met. It's called a tarantula, hawk wasp. It has an interesting coloration, Vex observed. The orange wings serve as warning signals to predators? Exactly, Alan said. The bright color warns that it has a very painful sting. In fact, it's considered one of the most painful insect stings on Earth. But what makes this wasp truly remarkable is its reproductive cycle. Alan advanced to the next image, showing the wasp hovering near a large, hairy spider. The female wasp hunts tarantulas, large hairy spiders that can be quite dangerous themselves. When she finds one, she engages in a battle with it. Silt's scales flickered to an interested yellow. A battle between small creatures? Which one typically wins? The wasp almost always wins, Alan said, and what happens next is truly extraordinary. I actually recorded this footage myself during a research expedition. Alan played the video he had captured with his high-definition research camera. The footage showed a tarantula hawk wasp circling a tarantula. The wasp darted in, quickly stinging the larger spider. The tarantula immediately became paralyzed, its legs curling up. The wasp's sting contains a special venom that paralyzes the tarantula but doesn't kill it, Alan explained, his voice filled with scientific enthusiasm. The tarantula is now completely helpless, but still alive. The video continued, showing the wasp dragging the much larger tarantula across the ground to a small burrow. The aliens watched with increasing tension. Alan noticed Vex's skin paling slightly and Silt's scales shifting toward a disturbed gray. But he was too caught up in his explanation to fully register their discomfort. Now comes the most fascinating part. Alan continued as the video showed. The wasp positioning the spider in the burrow. The wasp lays a single egg on the tarantula's abdomen. Then she seals the burrow and flies away. Alan advanced to more footage, showing a small white larva attached to the still paralyzed tarantula. When the egg hatches, the larva begins to feed on the tarantula. The amazing thing is that the wasp larva eats the spider in a specific order, saving the vital organs for last. This keeps the tarantula alive and fresh while being consumed. The video showed the growing larva burrowing into the tarantula's abdomen. The tarantula remains paralyzed but alive throughout this process, Alan explained. The larva is essentially eating a living creature from the inside out, but in a way that keeps its food source alive as long as possible. Eventually, it consumes the entire spider, forms a cocoon, and emerges as an adult wasp to start the cycle again. Alan turned to his alien friends, expecting to see the same scientific fascination he felt. Instead, he was met with expressions of horror. Vex had turned a sickly pale blue, while Silt's scales had shifted to a deep gray, almost black color. Several other aliens who had joined the presentation were backing away from the display. "Is something wrong?" Alan asked, suddenly concerned. Vex couldn't seem to find words. Silt was the first to speak, his voice strained. "This creature, it paralyzes its prey, keeps it alive while being eaten from within?" The Dracorian's voice trembled. "And this is common on your world?" "Well, parasitoid wasps are quite common, yes," Alan said, not fully understanding their reaction. "There are thousands of species that use similar strategies. Some target caterpillars, others use cockroaches or flies. It's a very successful, evolutionary strategy on Earth." A high-pitched alarm suddenly began to sound throughout the chamber. Ambassador Krell burst into the room, accompanied by several Zirconian security officers. "What's happening here?" Krell demanded, then saw the paused image of the wasp larva inside the tarantula. The ambassador's 4 eyes widened in shock. Alan watched in confusion as the room erupted into chaos. He had no idea that his simple presentation on Earth's insects was about to change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The alarm continued to blare throughout the exchange chamber. Alan stood frozen in confusion as the aliens around him reacted in what could only be described as panic. Vex had curled into a protective ball, a defensive posture Alan had never seen from a Zirconian before. Silt was backing away, his scales now a deep, frightened black. "Shut it off. Shut off that display immediately," Ambassador Krell shouted, his normally calm voice now high and strained. Alan quickly reached for the controls and stopped the video. "I don't understand. What's wrong? This is just normal biological behavior on Earth." Krell stared at him with all 4 eyes wide. "Normal? You call that horror normal?" The ambassador's skin had taken on a greenish tint that Alan hadn't seen before. A security officer approached, speaking rapidly in the clicking Zirconian language. Krell responded with sharp, urgent sounds. Throughout the chamber, other aliens were hurriedly leaving or communicating on devices similar to tablets. "Ambassador, please explain what's happening," Alan said, increasingly concerned. "I was simply sharing information about Earth's biology." Krell seemed to struggle to compose himself. "Dr. Moore, what you have just shown us is, there is no translation in your language. The closest would be soul corruption, or perhaps living nightmare. The concept of a creature that paralyzes another sentient being and keeps it alive while being devoured from within." The ambassador shuddered visibly. "But it's just an insect," Alan protested. "It's not sentient. It's just following instincts evolved over millions of years." "That makes it worse," Silt cried from across the room, his voice trembling. "Your planet has evolved creatures that naturally do that." Alan suddenly realized the scope of his mistake. What to him was fascinating natural behavior was apparently horrifying to these alien species. "I'm sorry, I had no idea this would upset you. On Earth, entomologists find this behavior fascinating from a scientific perspective." A new alarm sounded, different from the first. The security officer returned to Krell, speaking even more urgently. "What's he saying?" Alan asked. Krell turned to him, composure somewhat regained but still visibly disturbed. "Your presentation was being broadcast as part of our cultural exchange program. It went to several ships and even to some Confederation planets." "I don't understand why that's a problem," Alan said. "Because now thousands of beings across the Confederation have seen this horror from your world. The Emergency Council is convening. There are calls to quarantine Earth immediately." "Quarantine? Over an insect?" Alan couldn't believe what he was hearing. A large screen on the wall activated, showing what appeared to be a news broadcast from somewhere in the Confederation. Although the language was alien, Alan could see imagery from his presentation being shown. The Tarantula hawk wasp was displayed prominently, alongside other images of Earth predators that Alan hadn't included in his presentation. Krell gestured to the screen. They're already calling Earth a death world. Reports are coming in of panic on 3 Confederation planets. The Veluxians, who are naturally empathic, are experiencing mass psychosomatic paralysis just from viewing your recording. Alan felt sick. In his enthusiasm to share his scientific knowledge, he had apparently triggered an interstellar incident. I had no idea. In our films, we show far worse things for entertainment. Krell stared at him in renewed horror. For entertainment? You expose yourselves to such concepts willingly? Before Alan could respond, the door opened and a high-ranking Zirconian officer entered. He spoke rapidly to Krell, who nodded gravely. Dr. Moore, Krell said, turning back to Alan. The Confederation High Council has issued an emergency order. All non-essential personnel are being evacuated from Earth orbit immediately. I'm afraid you'll need to return to Earth. What? But we've barely begun cultural exchange. There's so much more to Earth than this one aspect of our biology, Alan protested. Vex, who had gradually uncurled from his protective position, approached cautiously. Alan, you don't understand. What you showed us violates the most fundamental, ethical principles of nearly every Confederation species. The concept of keeping prey alive while eating it. The young scientist couldn't finish the sentence. But there's so much beauty on Earth too, Alan argued. Cooperation, symbiosis, parental care, we have all those things as well. Perhaps, Krell acknowledged, but the existence of these parasitoid wasps raises serious questions about the safety of establishing relations with a species that evolved alongside such creatures. What kind of psychological tolerances must humans have developed? What does it mean for your species' ethical development? The security officer approached again, speaking urgently. We must go now, Krell said. The evacuation order has been upgraded to immediate departure. All ships are leaving Earth orbit within the hour. Alan felt a crushing disappointment. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. Let me try to explain. Let me show you other aspects of Earth life that aren't so it's disturbing to you. I'm sorry, Alan, Vex said, genuine regret in his voice. The decision comes from the highest levels. Even Ambassador Krell must obey. Will you ever come back? Alan asked, following as they hurriedly led him toward the shuttle bay. That remains to be decided by the High Council, Krell said formally. But I must be honest, it seems unlikely in the near future. As they walked quickly through the corridors, Alan saw aliens of various species rushing in all directions. Some carried equipment, others what appeared to be personal belongings. The entire ship was in emergency mode. They reached the shuttle bay where the same small craft that had first picked up Alan waited. A pilot was already inside, preparing for departure. What will I tell people on Earth? Alan asked. No one even knows we've made contact yet. Krell hesitated. That decision is yours. Without Confederation approval, no official contact protocol is in effect. Perhaps it's better if your world doesn't know how close we came to formal relations, or why they were suspended. Vex stepped forward suddenly. Alan, I want you to know that despite this incident, I valued our exchanges. Your world is terrifying but also fascinating. Perhaps someday when this shock has passed. Don't give him false hope, Vex, Silt said, having followed them to the shuttle bay. His scales had returned to a more normal color but still showed stress patterns. The Council will declare Earth a prohibited zone. No contact for at least 50 cycles. 50 cycles? How long is that in Earth years? Alan asked. Approximately 75 of your years, Krell said. Quietly, Alan felt his heart sink. By then he would be an old man if he was even still alive. The pilot signaled that they needed to board immediately. As Alan reluctantly entered the shuttle, Krell handed him a small device. This contains data on non-sensitive Confederation species and cultures, the ambassador said. A parting gift. Perhaps it will help your people prepare should contact ever be re-established. Alan took the device numbly. All this because I showed you a wasp? Krell's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. No, Dr. Moore. All this because your world created the Wasp. That tells us more about Earth than you can imagine. The shuttle door closed. Through the viewport, Alan saw Vex raise a hand in farewell. Then the bay doors opened, revealing the starry expanse of space, with the blue curve of Earth below. As the shuttle detached and began its descent toward the planet, Alan watched the massive mothership growing smaller above him. Already he could see other ships detaching from it, all moving away from Earth. The galaxy was fleeing, all because of a presentation on the Tarantula Hawk Wasp. Alan leaned back in his seat, wondering how he could possibly explain this to anyone on Earth. Who would believe that humanity's first contact ended because aliens found Earth's insects too horrifying to bear? 3 days after returning to Earth, Alan sat in a windowless conference room at a military base somewhere in Nevada. He had been here since his return, telling his story over and over to an ever-changing group of government officials, scientists, and military personnel. At first, they didn't believe him. Then they saw the alien device Krell had given him and everything changed. Across the table sat Dr. Nancy Hill, the newly appointed head of the hastily formed International Extraterrestrial Contact Committee. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and a reputation as one of the UN's top diplomats before being pulled into this role. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Dr. Moore," she said, tapping her pen against a thick folder. "You showed these aliens a video of a wasp paralyzing a spider and laying eggs on it, and that caused them to evacuate all their people from Earth orbit and possibly declare us off limits for 75 years. Alan nodded wearily. He had explained this at least 20 times already. Yes, what to us is simply nature documentary material was deeply disturbing to them. Ambassador Krell called it soul corruption. "And you had no warning that this might upset them?" asked General Frank Wilson, a stern-faced man who rarely spoke but always seemed skeptical. "They had shown some discomfort when I discussed predator-prey relationships before," Alan admitted. "But I had no idea the reaction would be so extreme. To them, the concept of a creature that paralyzes another being and keeps it alive while being eaten from the inside is beyond horrifying. It violates their most basic ethical principles." Dr. Olivia Barnes, a xenobiologist who had been brought in to analyze the alien data device, looked up from her tablet. "From what I can tell from the Confederation Biological Database, most life-bearing planets they've encountered have much simpler ecosystems. Predation exists but is straightforward. Quick kills, not prolonged suffering. Nothing like our parasitoids, parasites, or many of our predators. So we're scary because our planet produced scary bugs?" asked Senator Joe Collins, who represented the Senate Intelligence Committee. "It's more than that," Alan explained. "From their perspective, humans evolved on a planet filled with biological horrors. They seem to think this must have affected our psychological development as a species. The fact that I could show that video without distress confirmed their worst fears." Nancy Hill sighed deeply. "The timing couldn't be worse. We have conflicts brewing in 3 regions, climate issues escalating, and now we learn there's a galactic community out there, and they're afraid of us because of wasps." A young aide entered the room and handed General Wilson a tablet. He read it quickly, his expression darkening. "NASA reports all unidentified objects in Earth orbit have now departed," he announced. "The last one left 30 minutes ago. Whatever was out there is gone now." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Humanity had made first contact with alien life, only to frighten them away with nature videos. "What about the device they gave you?" Senator Collins asked, breaking the silence. "Have we learned anything useful from it?" Dr. Barnes nodded. "It contains basic information about approximately 50 Confederation species and their homeworlds. Nothing about their technology or defenses, but enough cultural and biological data to keep scientists busy for decades. It's clearly meant as an introduction package, perhaps what they would have given us if formal relations had proceeded." "Can we use this information to contact them?" Nancy asked. "To explain that our insects aren't representative of human behavior or values?" "The device is read only," Dr. Barnes replied. "No communication capabilities. And it doesn't include any star charts or coordinates. Alan had been quiet, thinking. There's something else worth considering. Before I left, one of the Zirconians, Silt, mentioned that the Council would declare Earth a prohibited zone, but his exact words were no contact for at least 50 cycles. That suggests their policy isn't permanent. 75 years is basically permanent for everyone in this room, General Wilson said grimly. Maybe not, Alan replied, an idea forming. What if we could demonstrate to them that humans aren't defined by the harshness of our evolutionary environment? That despite evolving alongside creatures like the Tarantula hawk wasp, we've developed empathy, cooperation, and ethics? Nancy Hill looked thoughtful. How would we do that without any way to contact them? The device shows they were monitoring our internet and broadcasts, Alan said. That's how they learned about me before making contact. They might still be watching, just from a greater distance. So you're suggesting we, what? Start broadcasting messages into space saying, "Sorry about our scary bugs, please come back?" Senator Collins asked with a short laugh. Not exactly, Alan said. But what if we increase scientific and cultural broadcasts that showcase human empathy, cooperation, and ethical progress? If they're still monitoring us, they might eventually reconsider. Dr. Barnes was nodding. And we could use what we've learned from their cultural database to tailor our messages in ways they would find appealing. General Wilson frowned. This all assumes they haven't completely written us off, and that they're still listening. I think they are, Alan said firmly. Ambassador Krell seemed genuinely disappointed that contact was being broken, and Vex, my Zirconian friend, definitely wanted to learn more about Earth despite being frightened. I don't think they've abandoned interest in us entirely. There's another angle we should consider, Nancy said slowly. According to your report, Dr. Moore, Krell mentioned something about humans having psychological tolerances that evolved due to our harsh environment. Could that be viewed as an advantage in some contexts? Alan thought back to his conversations on the mothership. Maybe. When I described Earth's predators before the Wasp incident, there was fear but also a kind of fascination. Almost like how we might view someone who grew up in extreme conditions and developed unusual resilience. General Wilson's expression changed slightly. So we might be seen as the tough species that evolved on a death planet and somehow developed technology and art instead of just becoming monsters ourselves. Exactly, Alan said, growing excited. In fact, the last thing Krell said to me was that the Wasp told them more about Earth than I could imagine. I took it as criticism, but what if there was a kind of respect mixed in too? Fear, but also recognition of what it means to evolve in such conditions and still develop compassion and civilization? Nancy Hill stood up, decision made. I'll take this approach to the Security Council. We'll establish a new division focused on crafting messages for potential extraterrestrial observers, highlighting human cooperation, empathy, and ethical development, despite our harsh evolutionary background. Meanwhile, Dr. Barnes added, we should continue analyzing the Confederation data. The more we understand about them, the better we can frame our message. As the meeting broke up, Alan felt a small spark of hope for the first time since returning to Earth. The aliens had fled because of a wasp, but perhaps they hadn't given up on humanity entirely. Outside the conference room, Senator Collins caught up with Alan. Dr. Moore, off the record, are we missing anything here, any other aspect of Earth that might be problematic to these aliens? Alan thought about the question. Humans had a complex history of warfare, cruelty, and environmental damage, but they also had art, music, compassion, and the drive to better themselves. Senator, I think our insects might be the least of our concerns if they study our history closely, Alan admitted. But maybe that's the point. If a species can evolve on a planet with parasitoid wasps, survive its own violent tendencies, and still reach for the stars, maybe that's a species worth knowing despite the risks. The senator nodded slowly. Let's hope they eventually come to the same conclusion. He paused, then added with a wry smile, and next time we meet aliens, maybe start with butterflies instead of wasps. 6 months had passed since the aliens departed Earth. Alan sat at his desk in the new Interstellar Communications Center, reviewing the latest broadcast package being prepared for transmission. The center had been established in an old NASA facility, now repurposed for humanity's attempts to reconnect with the Galactic Confederation. Alan had been appointed as the scientific advisor to the project, working alongside Dr. Nancy Hill and a team of scientists, linguists, and cultural experts. They had spent months analyzing the data from Krell's device, learning everything they could about Confederation species and cultures. "How does the new presentation look?" asked Dr. Hill, entering Alan's office with a cup of coffee in each hand. She passed one to Alan, who accepted it gratefully. "I think we've finally got the tone right," Alan replied, gesturing to his screen. "We're showcasing human empathy and cooperation without hiding our evolutionary history. The section on how we've developed conservation ethics despite evolving as predators is particularly strong." Nancy nodded. "The UN Security Council approved the full broadcast package this morning. We'll begin transmission tonight." Alan leaned back in his chair. "Do you really think they're still listening?" "We have to believe they are," Nancy replied. "The alternative is accepting that humanity's first interstellar relationship ended because of an unfortunate biology lesson." A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Barnes entered, looking excited. "You need to see this," she said, handing a tablet to Alan. "Our orbital telescopes just picked up an object approaching Earth. It's small, but it's decelerating in a way that defies our physics. Definitely not natural and not one of ours." Alan felt his heart rate increase. "Confederation? The energy signature matches what we recorded from their ship 6 months ago," Dr. Barnes confirmed. "It's them. Or at least one of them." Nancy was already on her phone, alerting the proper authorities. "How long until it reaches Earth orbit?" "About 3 hours at its current deceleration rate," Dr. Barnes replied. Alan stared at the tablet, hardly daring to hope. "They came back. After everything, they actually came back." The next 3 hours were a blur of activity. Government officials arrived, military personnel secured the facility, and a communication station was hastily prepared. Alan found himself in the center of it all, the only human who had extensive direct contact with the aliens. "We're tracking the object's descent," announced a technician. "It's heading for here. They're coming directly to this facility." Alan stepped outside with Nancy and a small group of officials. The night sky was clear, stars twinkling above them. In the distance, a pinpoint of light grew larger, descending smoothly toward the landing pad that had been hastily cleared. "It's the same design as their scout ship," Alan said, recognizing the sleek silver craft as it touched down silently on the concrete pad. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a familiar seam appeared in the side of the craft, widening into an opening. A figure emerged, and Alan immediately recognized the distinctive four-eyed silhouette of a Zirconian. "Vex?" Alan called out, stepping forward despite the security team's protests. The Zirconian approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. "Hello, Alan. It's good to see you again." Alan could hardly believe it. "You came back. I thought the Council declared Earth off-limits for at least 50 cycles." "They did," Vex confirmed. "I'm here in a limited capacity, not as an official Confederation representative, but as part of a special research team." Nancy stepped forward, introducing herself. "I'm Dr. Nancy Hill, head of Earth's Contact Committee. We welcome you back to our planet." Vex acknowledged her with a slight bow. "I'm not alone," he said, gesturing back to the ship. 5 more figures emerged, each from different species. Alan recognized a Dracorian that might be Silt, but the others were new to him. "We represent the Xenobiological Adaptation Research Division," Vex explained. "A small but growing faction within the Confederation that sees value in studying Earth's unique biological development and its effects on human psychology and culture." "So you're not afraid of our wasps anymore?" Alan asked with a small smile. Vex made a sound that Alan recognized as Zirconian laughter. "We're still terrified of your wasps, Alan, and your spiders, and most of your predators. Your entire planet remains classified as a death world." The alien paused. "But that's precisely what makes humans interesting to us." One of the other aliens stepped forward, a tall, insectoid being with compound eyes and translucent wings. "I am Cheese of the Thexians," it said in a surprisingly melodic voice. "We specialize in adaptation and survival strategies. Your species evolved on a world that would drive most Confederation species to madness, yet you developed art, philosophy, and compassion. This is unprecedented." Nancy looked pleased. "We've been trying to communicate exactly that point in our broadcasts. You received them?" "We did," Vex confirmed. "They helped convince the Research Council to approve this expedition, though I must admit I had already been advocating for reconsideration of Earth since my return." Alan felt a surge of gratitude toward his alien friend. "What happens now?" "We propose a limited exchange program," Vex explained. "Not full Confederation membership, that remains centuries away at minimum, but scientific and cultural exchange between our research division and selected human representatives." The Dracorian that Alan now confirmed was indeed Silt stepped forward, his scales shifting through patterns of blue and green. "Your broadcasts showed wisdom, Alan. You didn't deny your world's harshness or try to hide it. Instead, you demonstrated how it shaped human resilience and adaptation. We believe humans may have much to teach the Confederation about survival, adaptation, and evolving in harsh conditions," added Chuz. "In return, we can share knowledge that might help Earth address its environmental and social challenges." Nancy looked to the government officials who nodded their approval. "We would welcome such an exchange," she said formally. "There is one condition," Vex added, a hint of amusement in his voice. "No more presentations on parasitoid wasps, please. Some concepts remain difficult for many of our species." Alan laughed. "I think we can manage that. There are plenty of beautiful, non-terrifying Earth creatures we can focus on instead." The group moved toward the facility, aliens and humans walking side by side. As they entered, Vex pulled Alan aside. "I brought you something," the Zirconian said, handing Alan a small transparent container. Inside was a perfectly preserved tarantula hawk wasp, suspended in what appeared to be a clear crystal. "You kept one?" Alan asked, surprised. "It has become something of a symbol," Vex explained. "Within our research division, this creature represents the extraordinary evolutionary pressures that shaped humanity. It reminds us that if humans could evolve alongside such beings and develop compassion, rather than becoming monsters themselves, perhaps there is more hope for the galaxy than we realized." Alan looked at the preserved wasp with new appreciation. The creature that had nearly ended humanity's first contact was now the symbol that had brought the aliens back. "I have a feeling this is just the beginning," Alan said, looking from the wasp to his alien friend. Vex's four eyes blinked in sequence, a Zirconian expression of agreement. "Indeed. Earth may be a death world, but it seems its people might be exactly what the galaxy needs." Together, they rejoined the others, taking the first real steps toward humanity's place among the stars. The tarantula hawk wasp had chased the aliens away, but in the end it had also brought them back, with a new appreciation for the strange, resilient species that called Earth home.